previous owner of this motorcycle had recently broken his hip while riding it. The tires had almost no tread left, the brakes were more of a suggestion than an actual way of stopping, and somewhere ahead of us the road to Senegal was disappearing underneath the first major rainstorm of the season. So naturally, I decided it was the perfect motorcycle for my first experience on a two-stroke. While I was working at a hospital in Gambia, a friend offered to lend me his Yamaha DT175, a small, lightweight, air-cooled two-stroke. On paper it sounded perfect for exploring the dirt roads and small farming villages outside the busier parts of the Gambia. There was only one slightly worrying detail. The owner had recently broken his hip while riding this exact motorcycle. So either he trusted me a lot, or he simply wanted somebody else to test whether it was still dangerous. My plan was simple: ride north through the countryside, follow the dirt tracks towards Senegal, reach the border and return before anything went wrong. At least that was the plan.
I'm riding the Yamaha Super Trail 175 in the Gambia. I try to keep a steady, the camera steady, but the roads and my setup is not too great. It's kind of sturdy enough, but we'll see. So for this week we have a review of me driving this bike in Gambia in my working attire, because that's the closest and strongest I have for off-road driving here.
So there I was, nearly 2 meters tall, wearing a nursing uniform and a borrowed helmet, preparing to ride a small two-stroke motorcycle towards Senegal. My friend and taxi driver followed me in his car. He wasn't there to film, he came purely for safety. Once you leave the main roads, some of these routes become very remote. Phone reception is not a guarantee, the condition of the road can change quickly, and if the bike stopped running, getting it back would not be easy. Having a car behind me sounded like a sensible backup plan, although later the car would have almost as much trouble with the route as the motorcycle. Before heading towards the border, I took the Yamaha for a short test ride. And immediately the engine surprised me. The DT175 is not a powerful motorcycle, but because it weighs so little, it felt much faster and more energetic than I expected. The two-stroke engine responded quickly, the bike was easy to move around, and with my large body sitting on it, the performance was absolutely fine. Power was not going to be the problem. Stopping was. The front brake had very little effect and the rear brake was not much better. The worn tires also offered very little grip, even while the ground was still dry. After the test ride, I adjusted the drum brakes slightly. It didn't suddenly turn them into modern brakes, but it definitely helped. At least now, when I pressed the brake pedal, something happened. Not much, but something. With the brakes slightly improved, we went to get fuel.
Yeah, let's say, you want to make it full tank? Or?
Yeah, full tank, yeah.
Yeah, you just put it full tank, we look at the fuel.
Yeah, and that will pay, yeah?
From there, we would leave the main road and head north towards Senegal. The sky was already beginning to look darker, but the rainy season only had just started. Surely, the first major storm of the season would not arrive during the few hours I had chosen to go riding. That would be extremely unlucky. It arrived around 10 kilometers later. At first the ride was exactly what I had hoped for. Small dirt tracks moved between the fields, farms and villages that were far away from the main tourist areas. The little Yamaha was perfect here. It was light enough to move around deep sand and ruts, but the engine still had enough power to make it genuinely fun. On a heavy bike you constantly think about the weight. Here I could simply ride. We passed small farming communities where people were growing mint plants, mostly used for making tea. Many of these villages rarely see foreigners, or as white people are commonly called here are toubabs. Everywhere we went, people stopped what they were doing and waved. Children ran towards the roads. Farmers looked up from their work. In the more frequently visited parts of the Gambia, people sometimes wave and then ask for money. Out here they simply seemed happy and surprised to see us. It made the ride feel completely different from traveling through the busier areas. Then the first drops of rain started falling. At first it felt refreshing. Gambia is hot, especially when you're wearing a thick cotton nursing uniform. A little rain did not seem like a problem, but tropical rain does not always arrive slowly. Within minutes the sky completely opened. The dry tracks immediately began changing, sand turned into mud, small holes disappeared underneath brown water, and the worn tires started sliding in almost every direction. The Yamaha still had enough power, but power is only useful when the tires can transfer it to the ground, and slowing down becomes difficult when the brakes are weak. The surface is slippery and you cannot see what's hiding underneath the water. Every puddle became a gamble. It could be a few centimeters deep, or it could contain a hole large enough to swallow the front wheel. The only way to find out was to ride into it. The car behind me was supposed to be our safety net, but as the rain became heavier, even the car began struggling. The tracks were narrow, the mud was getting deeper, and some sections were completely flooded. So now, instead of only worrying about whether the Yamaha would make it through, we also had to make sure the vehicle following me did not become stuck. Our backup plan was slowly turning into another part of the adventure.
How are you doing?
Doing good, and you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Local village here, huh? You've ever been here?
Never.
No? It's raining like crazy, I can see.
The water kept rising. In some places it was around 40 centimeters deep, maybe half a meter, although stories like this tend to gain another 10 centimeters every time they are told. The real danger was not the depth itself, it was not knowing what was underneath. The water completely covered the road, I could not see the holes, rocks or deep ruts. Stopping halfway was not an option. A two-stroke needs to keep breathing, so I kept the revs up, chose a direction and tried to maintain momentum. The Yamaha moved from side to side, water came over my running shoes because that was the only shoes that I had with me. The rear tires searched desperately for grip, but the little DT kept running.
Damn it!
At this point, turning back would have been the sensible decision. We were only around 10 kilometers into the off-road section when the storm started. The roads were continuing to flood, the visibility was terrible and we still had not reached Senegal. But we had already come this far. The motorcycle was still running, the car was still moving, and according to the route, the border was getting closer. So we continued, slowly, very wet, but still moving. Eventually, through the rain and flooded tracks, we reached the Senegalese border. That was the goal, not a major border crossing with barriers and long queues, just a remote point between Gambia and Senegal, reached on small countryside tracks. We stopped and took a photo.
It's pretty nice, but like I was talking, the rear tire is almost bald and the front tire pretty much as well. So we're in Senegal now and we're getting back to where we came from. We have my good friend there, he's taking a pee.
A tiny Yamaha two-stroke, a very wet nursing student, and a taxi driver who had somehow managed to follow the entire route in his car. For a moment, the broken hip, the borrowed helmet, the poor brakes and the completely worn out tires all seems worth it. We had made it. But reaching Senegal was only half the journey. We still had to get back. Shortly after reaching the border, the rain finally stopped. The visibility immediately improved. For the first time we could properly see the landscape around us again, but the water did not disappear. The roads were still completely flooded and in some places the water had continued to rise. Now we could see the scale of what we had just ridden through. Entire sections of track had become small rivers. The return journey would be easier to see, but not necessarily easier to ride. On the way back we passed the same villages again. People came outside to wave as we rode past. By now I was completely soaked, covered in mud and probably looked even more unusual than before. A giant toubab wearing a nursing uniform riding a tiny two-stroke through flooded farmland. The Yamaha continued to impress me. The brakes were still poor, the tires were still almost completely smooth, but the engine never complained. It was simple, light and perfectly suited to the small tracks. Sometimes a motorcycle does not need a huge amount of power, advanced electronics or expensive suspension. Sometimes it only needs to keep running.
That's awfully wet though.
Eventually, the mud turned back into a proper road. The Yamaha had survived. The car had survived, and somehow I managed not to repeat the previous owner's hip injury. My nursing uniform was soaked through, my running shoes were full of water, and every part of me was tired. We had ridden to Senegal and back during the first major rainstorm of the season, on a borrowed Yamaha DT175 with worn tires and barely functioning brakes. That made it a proper adventure.
I'm wet.
The bag must be crying.
Nah, it's fine.
Leonard has right on me. How was it?
I had fun.
The rain.
Well, I did wet. I can hear you better now. I took this with me. I was like, maybe it's nice. Just, no one having earplugs in when I'm driving the motorcycle.
Oh, okay. So how was it?
Oh, it was fun. We went to the off-road road and went to Senegal, made some pictures and then went back.
Senegal?
Yeah.